What's up, Zox fam? Now, we've had obviously a pretty major patch, but there was one thing that I completely overlooked, and I have to shout out those of you guys that brought to my attention because this is actually massive. There are some new craft items that I wanted to go over, as well as the resource and giving you some shop priorities now that we understand what the value is of this said resource. So we're gonna go ahead and jump right into it. So first things first, let's actually head over to the craft bench. And if we go to the second tab here, it's actually going to be, if we just simply scroll down, which I didn't bother doing initially, a whole slew of new items for us to craft. Now, the thing is that, well, for those of you who are probably wondering, what are these items? Well, these are going to be our gifts slash presents that we basically utilize for either gifting to a character or for ranking up. Now, to simply answer that question, because that was a question that did come up, was it more valuable to, and what items will we be gifting to characters? So I answer that first part is what's more valuable. You technically want to be using these first for ranking up. I think ranking up is going to give you more benefit for the long term, as far as obviously giving you more rank points so that you can allocate those into the values on your character to make them stronger. Now, how far you're able to take that right away as a free to play, I will say it is going to take an extremely long time, just because it requires a ton of kane and resources for you to be able to go to like EX3, for example. So EX to EX1 might be like the peak for like a lot of people that are super grindy for right now. And as we push further, it's just going to only become easier. We're going to have more resources, more than likely start stacking. So it's not going to be too bad, right? Now, gifting, I will say that I was able to actually test this out. And this is why it was something I was actually going to initially make a video on. But because we have this, I decided to do this instead. But if we actually take a look at the items that we can craft, we can actually utilize the judge robot models to craft these items. And you might be wondering, where do you get the judge robot model? Now, the irony behind this is that the judge robot model is an item that is only accessible via the shop. Okay. Now, the thing is that to kind of touch on what I was initially going to be making a video on, I actually took one of my judge models just for experiment's sake, which is why I only have 8 out of 10. I actually took one and I gifted it to one of my characters just to see what happened. And basically, when you gift a character something, all it really does is it basically raises the friendship of the character. As of the recording of this video, there's nothing that really you seem to gain from having high friendship on a character. Maybe this is something that they're going to be adding in the future, just kind of how they had the judge robot model in the game, but there really wasn't a purpose or a way to really put it to use, or it was really just unknown what the use for it was. We now know obviously what it's for. So I feel like the premise of friendship, there's probably going to be something that unlocks that maybe gives us some extra currency or cosmetics when we start looking at further investing and pushing friendship. So they might be introducing that sooner than later. But I think it's really important to note that I don't think it's worth obviously giving this to a character just as a gift, but now we know we can use this for actually crafting any of the items that we need to specifically go to ranking up. Okay. Very, very important to note that. Now, with that being the case, what items should you be focusing? How many of these are you realistically going to be able to do? Well, I think really when it comes down to how much of this specific currency you have, you basically have to either gain this from the gacha or you dissemble, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's 2-star tension cards, right? Now, with that being the case, some of the high in value items I would say to target obviously would be between the free Enigma entity and the free robot model, because the free robot model now can supplement, say for example, you like missed the first week, right? Like there was some people that had that gripe. You kind of can make up for it now, for example, for maybe the main character that you're really using. I really even would suggest that even if you are going for more presence, essentially, this is really only emphasizing like maybe that you have characters that you aren't able to rotate, or you're really not that good at getting through content with, because if you're doing it every single week, might not really need to actually push that. Maybe later on when there's something else presented with friendship, and if the reward system, or if there is a reward system that's good for that, then it might be actually worthwhile crafting this specific item that a character gets the most value for you crafting. So like their unique item, like for example, if it's Roku, I think it's like the dumbbell, right? But most importantly, I would definitely say the free Enigma is definitely going to be one of the first things. For one, it's a lower quantity, and two, it also is cheaper, right? So between those two, first free Enigma, then I would say the Judge Robot model. Those would be kind of the things that I would say you want to aim for. Everything else in here is basically craftable. The Kane even, it's basically, I think, what, 100, or yeah, it's basically 100K that you're able to get because it's a stack of 10. This is something that I would say would probably be the third thing that you would buy in here. So it just kind of all depends on, you know, realistically what you have at that point. But if you don't have enough points, definitely the first two things. And then lastly would be the Kane. Everything else you can basically craft up, which really isn't that hard to get, right? And it even drops, I would even argue, from some characters. So yeah, it's really not that hard to get. Now with the first shop, I do want to just quickly mention this one. This one's a little bit obvious. Obviously, free Enigma, synchro metals every rotation. This is going to require the bronze variation of the enigmatic pieces, which again, everything in here is basically things you just generally farm. So the only other thing that would be of value would be the Kane, considering that Kane is still one of the more scarcer resources in the game. So again, if you do have any excess or extra, always free Enigma first, synchro metals as well, just because again, that can go towards the standard banner, and then you have the Kane. Now, let's actually talk about the enigmatic fragment exchange. Now with this is actually going to be a little bit different. I would say honestly, even over the free Enigma entity here, which is nice, it is actually one of the more higher priced or higher value things. Now, if you have the time to actually farm, you could always just farm and craft up the other three resources here, which is the Weeping Heart of Vengeance, as well as the Perfect Headpiece and the Lethal Eraser Mark IV. But these are definitely valuable to actually pick up. These are what are required to take items typically to level 50. And what I mean by items, tension cards, right? More than likely, these are going to be going to tension cards. This definitely can help alleviate some of the grind, which I guess that kind of depends on how much time you have relative to how much of this currency you have. This is going to be coming from pulling dupes of like the higher rarity units in the game, as well as disassembling 3-star tension cards, and you're able to obtain this resource from clearing out the Fractal Vice every week. So again, just to kind of recalibrate and just kind of now understanding what the values are of these resources, everything is basically farmable, but the free Enigma entity obviously is something that reoccurs or resets monthly. And I would definitely say that it's really between the top 3 rarity items, the Perfect Headpiece, the Weeping Heart of Vengeance, and the Lethal Eraser Mark IV, and then the free Enigma entity. It just really depends on what you're doing. If you're at a point where, say for example, you don't really have any cards you're really trying to invest in, then I definitely would say, yeah, for sure, pick up the free Enigma entity. Now, there is one caveat that I want to bring up though, is that with that resource, there's one other place that you have to be mindful or keeping in mind. And this is for all of the resources. This is really just a matter of what you value in this game. So if we actually go back real quick and let's actually go to the hotel because it's just easier to get there. So let's go to one of the major places in the game that isn't just accessible to you right away. But if we actually go over to, and I think, is it this way or is it the other way? I think it's not the Patty Mate. No, it's not Atenna. No, I was going the right way. It's this right here, the card station. Okay, so the card station actually is going to use the same currency. Okay. So this is something that you also want to consider. And this is why I wanted to make sure I made this video with it all collectively having these talking points, because again, you can technically go and buy all of the standard tension cards in the game. That is including from the lowest rarity tension cards to the mid-range or 2-star tension cards, all the way up to the 3-star tension cards. So these are things that you could technically start saving for. So you do not have to technically utilize resources in that last shot, for example. You can just save it and grind. right? And basically accumulate this per week and build up to getting this free to play. Now, my suggestion would be, depending on what you would say would a person need to value more, I would personally say that for the long term, it would probably be better to aim for this type of ordeal. Because let's say, for example, you don't actually go for the banner right now, things to hold on to is actually in here. Right. So you can use 500 currency to buy this completely out of the season of or the rotation of the current rate up banner. Right. And so this is something just to kind of think about, that you can technically get access to different cards that you don't have yet with basically saving the currency. And the cool thing is that it seems like even the quote unquote limited banners, they're actually adding these to here. Now, I don't think Simba counts. I think she actually is truly a limited unit. I don't think Kazuki is considered a full send limited unit. So maybe she might get rotated in here, but there's a reason why she's not in here. And I think it's because she's a true limited banner, whereas Kazuki isn't necessarily a limited unit and or banner. So these are just things to kind of consider, is that obviously more cards are going to get added to the shop, which is huge, right? This is like a huge thing. And I didn't even realize that until just now. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's actually kind of a big deal. And so, of course, there might be other cards that come into the game that might get added that you could also come in here and use this currency for. Like I'm already almost actually above halfway there, right? For me to be able to buy one of these 2-star cards. And these cards are actually quite impactful, especially now because a lot of the tension values tension costs don't exist anymore. So yeah, just wanted to make that a point, right? So with that, okay, just to touch back on real quick, lastly, the craft system. Again, you do have this accessible to you. Would this be something that you're prioritizing? You know, how much should this be? Like, how much should you buy? Should you always try to get at least one per rotation? Like saying buying 3 judges. It really honestly depends on how often you pull. I will say this does kind of seem to become more of a thing that's relying on how often you pull. Almost feeling a little bit more spendy just because of the accumulation of the currency. But considering that, I mean, you are going to be pulling at some point, and eventually disassembling or getting these enigmatic fragments, I definitely think that it's just valuable to know that you can do this. So if you are short one, or you are like, hey, I don't want to wait till that next week for the reset, I can just go in here and craft it. You can do so, right? And it doesn't seem like there's any limitation. So I guess there is that, right? Which is kind of cool. But you are technically limited to 10 judges a month in that shop. So that's the limitation there versus how many you can actually craft, right? So yeah, guys, that's basically going to be that. I just wanted to make sure I brought this to your attention. Kind of went over the shop priorities that I really felt like a lot of players that are now starting to actually get a little bit deeper into the game, just to kind of give you some sort of awareness of the value that you basically can utilize this currency for, which honestly makes this gacha one of the best gachas out there, just because of the exchange of currency within the game, right? So that's going to be basically that with this one, guys. Everyone, stay blessed, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.